Welcome to Carter's Retro Reviews. Today we're going to be reviewing a Virtual Golf for the Sega Saturn. Now, before I get onto the review here, there's a couple of things. First of all, you may notice that I'm recording on a different angle and that I sound a little bit different. Now, the reason for that is my webcam has actually stopped working on my old computer. So, sorry, I've just noticed that on this angle it looks a little bit dodgy. Looks like I perform questionable acts to dirty old men for money. Yeah, I'd never do that. Anyhow, I have reviewed all the golf games on the Sega Saturn in both the US and the PAL region, except for one. That's right, Virtual Golf for the Sega Saturn. Well, is it any good? Let's find out. Here it is at last, the last golf game released in the PAL and US regions for me to review on the Sega Saturn, Virtual Golf. Released in Japan as Tournament Leader, developed and published by Core Design in the PAL region, and published by Victor Entertainment in Japan in 1996. The game was supposed to be a 32X game called Tee-Off, but I guess they thought they would have had more opportunity on the Saturn. And while that turned out to be true, there's a level of irony that needs to be appreciated here. I'll be honest, I didn't expect this. I didn't think this game was going to be any good, but the whole purpose of reviewing all 6 golf games was to get some perspective on the game of golf, and in the process I've seen the exact same game of golf given its own interpretation in 6 different ways. Some try something totally different by being a little more extreme and arcadey like Velura Valley Golf, while others are far more pure like actual golf. And then we had PGA Tour 97, whatever the fuck that travesty was. So without further ado, let's look at one of the best golf games on the system. Presentation is a mixed bag. It's better than any of the T&E titles in design, opting for something a little more exciting visually in design choice, but colours seem to play the safe bet. The interesting thing is how I felt the presentation in actual golf was far more interesting and engaging. This is better in gameplay, but on how it looks, it's strangely boring and lackluster. Graphics are solid. There's no digitized characters and animation is pretty smooth. Even the small things like clouds moving in the background are a real nice touch. The colours of the courses are done well, giving us different colours of green. It's not amazing, but for the era, it's pretty good. The surrounding environments are not bad. Up close, they're pretty horrendous to look at, with sprites looking pretty pixelated, but at a distance, everything looks reasonably polished. Sound has no soundtrack to speak of, and the sound effects are pretty sparse, even for a golf game. It feels like it's on the side of lazy while giving us the authentic golf sound of silence. More sound effects might have helped fill out the sound of my own thoughts questioning my life choices. Gameplay is possibly the best in the golf genre on the Sega Saturn. The swing bar is slow enough to be fun, forgiving, and still give you a glimmer of hope while just enough of a challenge from the very reactive controls. The swing bar is perhaps the best of any golf game because it's so big and slow moving and it actually tells you where you should be aiming. You get an overhead map which doesn't pop up by default, but once enabled makes the game infinitely better with more control. Better angles, including straight up in the air, which is surprising how much of a difference that makes. You have different cam options which can only be accessed via the start button menu, which I thought was kind of a poor presentation decision because it took me a while to figure out that such a thing existed and was not handy from a button press. And we do have 6 main buttons to choose from before even thinking about using the bumper buttons for this function. And since I didn't bother reading the manual, it wasn't so bad that I couldn't get anything to work. If anything, it was interesting. As I was playing, I would progressively find where all the useful things were to make this game more playable. The whole ease of playing, however, is offset by the difficulty in your opponents, which is definitely a good thing. Some of the other games I reviewed actually make it both hard to play and difficult opponents, which makes things frustrating. But here, it felt competitive and fun. It took decisions like the big swing bar from PGA Tour 97 and improved upon it in a few different ways. It also feels like the wind actually has more of a play here than any other golf game I've played. Replayability is, well, it's a ton of modes. Suffice to say that there is plenty here. And yes, I would recommend it. It's very similar to actual golf, so if you have that game and you're not enthusiastic enough to want a similar game, maybe stay away. But if you love golf or you don't have actual golf, I would say either get actual golf or this game if you're looking for a purest emulation of golf for this particular era.
That's a bogey.